when you start with the small steps, what you're
Yeah.
actually doing is you're creating a new identity. And your identity is your anchor point that is who you believe you are.
Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Hey, Austin, welcome to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I am so glad you are here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I get to introduce myself, so this is great. So
You do. Yeah, I'm going to let
I'm
you
gonna
do
take
that.
So when people give you, they give you uh like a thing, right? They talk about your life, they talk about what you've done, right? Everything like that. Had a mentor back in the day. I really didn't like podcast. He didn't talk much. Like he wasn't on social media. He said, "Why would you talk about things that I have done? They are only stats of what I've done. Why don't you talk about where I failed? Because that's my actual resume." And I just loved it because it's the truth, right? And
Right.
so, one of the ways that I used to introduce myself when I was getting sober was, "Hi, I'm dead serious. This was at networking events for real estate, you name it. I'd be like, 'Hi, my name's Austin. I'm divorced. I used to be a drug addict. I'm alcoholic. Nice to meet you.'" And people would be like, "Whoa, dude, what the hell?" But what it did is it gave them license to not feel so bad about their problems. And I
Mhm.
think I think that is that we're so shamed in the areas that we failed, or that we seem that we failed, that we don't highlight that, right? I, came from, an entrepreneurship family, even though I didn't realize it till 38, and
Yeah.
had an epiphany in Costa Rica with my coach. I grew up in an area where my dad got more and more successful as we got older. As a kid, I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand the aspects of, when we keep moving into a house and that house gets bigger and the neighborhood gets nicer and blah 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 blah. All the people, like, I lived across the street from some Houston Rockets. I lived on a golf course. That whole thing.
Mhm.
They were so miserable. And they kept telling my dad he needed to drive a BMW, and he drove a truck and all these things. And I think a large portion of my early life, I ran for money because I told myself it was only going to make me miserable like those people. These are
Did they
things that you
tell
don't figure out till later, right? You don't subconsciously know that. You look at, well, I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to do what my dad did. I don't like that. I don't hate school. Dropped out of college 3 times. I don't want to do that. But that's what you're told, right? You need to do this and you need to do that, especially in
Mhm.
the time I grew up, right? It was college and this, and this has shifted now. I just think it was a weird way to live, because I was basically walking down the road for nothing that I cared about personally.
So at some point you shifted that identity, right? So you went from being an alcoholic, a recovering alcoholic, drug addict, homeless. I think that's part of your story too.
Here's
At
what's
some point you shifted, right?
Chase, my business partner, who coaches in the same coaching group that I do.
Mhm.
We get him and I get on about every 3 months, and we do like a "What's Up with Austin" podcast, right? And we got on. You know, sometimes when you're not looking for it, the haymakers can come.
Mhm.
But I want to find this podcast for you because I couldn't basically talk. He short circuited my brain, which has never happens in the history of the world, right? And he said, "Hey, man, I've been holding on to this for like 6 months, but I just wanted to tell you that I haven't heard you introduce yourself that way." And I was like, "Holy shit,
Yeah.
you're right." Like, I've moved on from it.
At some point you have to let it go and say, "You know what? The past is a past. Okay, I don't have to hold that identity anymore." You know? I knew people like that who were recovering and they held on to
It's
it
it's
for
it's
like
my
decades, you know?
it's my biggest issue. It's my biggest
Yeah.
issue with AA, and I apologize to anybody that's got sober that way. I'm not dogging on that part of it. But when you're 15, 20 years in, at some point you got to let it go.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite sayings is, "I'm not in recovery, I've recovered." You're changing the ending, but it means so much.
Yeah, right. Because 'cause you're no longer there. I mean, you don't have to identify with that past anymore. It's
Mhm.
just it doesn't serve, and if it doesn't serve you, why? Why would you even
Mhm.
go there? Why would you
Well,
even go there?
I think your name of your podcast has an interesting connotation, and I think I can add deep context to my sobriety,
Mm,
and how I implemented what your podcast means.
go for it.
My whole life, I was a person who stopped and started 90 bajillion things. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna, whatever. And I said, what would it look like? I said, where can I get my small wins? I read a book called Slight Edge, changed my life. Where can I get my small wins that are gonna equal up to a big new version of myself, right? And so I said, well, the number one place I can find that is in the gym, okay? Because health is the quickest thing that you can see and changes in you and how you operate. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week. I'm not going to worry about how long I'm there. I'm not going to worry about what I do. I'm just going to go to the gym. That's going to be my new thing. So I did that for 7 days, and then I did it for another 7 days, and then I did it for another 7 days, and then I implemented a second. I'm going to read 10 pages of a book. So you start adding on these habits.
Hmm.
And what I knew is that I read a book. He's my favorite personal development guy because he's an ex-comedian and he's wild. He's crazy. His name's Kyle Cease. And he tells a story about doing a juice fast. And he was doing a juice fast to lose weight. And he did a juice fast for 3 days and he got on the scale and he gained 3 pounds. And he got so mad that he threw the scale across the room and broke the scale. And he said, whoa, hold on. He said, so what was the reason I did the juice cleanse? Well, the reason was to feel good. Well, do I feel good? Yeah, I feel good. Okay, well then who cares what my weight is, right? And
Right.
so when I heard that, I threw my scale out and I said, what would it look like if I'm just a person that goes to the gym every day and I create a healthy lifestyle? There wasn't like parameters around it, like you got to lose this weight, you got to do that. But it was like, if I just do this over and over again, then I'm sure there'll be results. And so what that turned into is it turned into me losing 75 pounds. It
Wow.
turned it turned me into doing 2 half Ironmans by myself during COVID, biking 20 miles a day. Like,
Yeah.
what we do subconsciously is we build up such big goals that we fail at them. And then subconsciously we say, see, I told you couldn't do better.
Mm,
Instead of building up to those bigger wins and those bigger goals by creating small, winnable steps. Because here's what they don't tell you, right? It's not about actually the work that you're doing in the gym. It's going to do that in the first place. That's what you're seeking. That's just the result of you showing up at the gym. The rest of the stuff is binary because the confidence you gain from actually signing up, doing the small wins and letting them compound is where you make the real wins in life. And that's what's won me and created more wins in my life than anything else.
that's an awesome point. I mean, if you think about it, you could just remove the word gym and just
Mhm.
say show up in a small blank.
Mhm.
And, whether it's read a
There's
book,
a
go to the
there's a
gym,
there's a story
anything.
of a 400-pound guy, and
Hmm.
he said, they said, "Well, what do you need to do?" And so for a week, he just drove to the gym. He didn't even
Mm,
go inside. He just drove to the gym, and then next he went into the gym for a minute, and then he went into the gym for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and he lost 150 pounds later.
yeah.
And Sean Casey, who's my business partner's friend, who's an ex Hall of Fame baseball player, he coaches for the Yankees now. If you ever want to meet somebody that'll give you no excuses, he's your guy. He doesn't. He says, "Look, you're sitting over here. You're giving me this song and dance, Lenny." This is him talking to me. You're giving me this song and dance. He said, "Can't do one push up. You can't do
Yeah.
one
Right.
push up a day. You need to do 20. This doesn't make sense. Do
Right.
one until you do one every day, and then you do two, and three, and four." And
Hmm.
he's just like, dude, it's not that complicated. And
Yeah.
so he
Just get.
had a buddy who wanted to lose weight. And so what he told him, he says, what's something that you do every day that you can attach your push up to? And so every day before he went and used the restroom, when he woke up in the morning, he did one push up. That guy's doing 150 push ups a day now.
Awesome. Boy, if that we could just stop the podcast right there. Small steps, big wins, folks. There it is. Just do one thing, pick one thing. But I think it's so, you know, I think there's a deeper problem going on that we get sucked into this belief that you have to instantaneously produce something big quickly.
Mhm.
And I think social media has absolutely made all of us disillusioned. So
Yeah.
you get on Facebook and you scroll through Facebook, it's like, oh wow, I just ran my 100th Ironman. Like I just did my 100th Ironman. You know, can't even walk around the block, and I think we get so discouraged too when you see that. You're like, well, why even bother starting? And I have to wonder if it's just because we've convinced ourselves that there's something out there on a standard that we have to hold up to, when really the only person that matters is what's inside. It matters to us. Like I'm only instead of competing against somebody else, it's really only against me. Who was I
Mhm.
yesterday? Am I 1% better today than what I was
Mhm.
yesterday? And if we
Yeah.
can move the needle that way without looking on social media, without comparing ourselves to others, I think everybody there's no excuse why anybody can't have a small win in some area of their life that's
Mhm.
going to lead to some kind of change.
Yeah, I mean, I think
What do you think?
it's not anybody's at the end of the day, it's really simple. Your small win for somebody else's small win is nothing. Meaning what you deem as a small win or you deem as a big win is yours and yours
Right.
alone. And nobody can put context around whether or not that means to you. And the fact that you're letting other people dictate which the wins are
Mm.
in your life is the reason that you're not winning. This is a random story, but it means it's important, right? And the day before I don't know why I want to tell the story, and I just it's the funniest thing I ever heard in my life. So the week before I got married, my first marriage, I was playing golf with like an 85-year-old man who'd been married like 55 years. And so we play like all day. It's just me and him, right? Play all day. Last hole, we're on the green. I was like, "Hey man, I'm about to get married next week." He's like, "You got any advice?" And he just keeps walking off the green. And he like turns around and he goes, "Hey man, those are just one of those things you're gonna have to figure out for yourself." And he just walks off. And I was like, "What the fuck?" But it
I
but
wanted some secrets, man. Give
but
me something.
but as I look back on it now,
Yeah.
right? As I'm older, I'm 40 myself. I get what he meant. And we search for so much meaning from others, right? From books, from podcasts, from everything. But like when you truly become unstoppable is when you don't need external forces to get you motivated. When you don't need to look at somebody's Instagram and go, I'm not doing that, right? Like, who
Mhm.
cares what they're doing? It doesn't matter. You don't know nothing about them. And I
Right.
think the easiest way to put it in context is I just got a DM from a guy a minute ago. If I were to look at his business on scale, on the website, on the reviews, what the customers are saying, it looks like a great business.
Mhm.
Yeah, but did you know 2 years ago, they almost went bankrupt? So the
No.
question that you have to ask yourself is how many people that are portraying on social media are personally bankrupt?
How do you know if it's true? Really? I
You
mean,
don't.
you don't. Well, that's the point. You don't. I mean, there's a great story, since we're in story mode. I heard it said once, there's a guy on a bus, and he has 2 kids with him, and the kids are like terrors. They're jumping all over the place. They're, bothering the other people. They're making lots of noise. They're doing this, they're doing that. And the dad's just sitting there kind of, somber, and just letting the kids get away with this stuff that they're really not supposed to be doing. They're bothering people around. Finally, a little old lady turns to him and goes, "Hey, why don't you control your kids there? They're terrorizing everybody on the bus." He turned to her and he goes, "Yeah, he said, but I'm just coming back from my wife's funeral. She died really suddenly. So I'm just trying to process all that." It- and when I heard that story for the first time, I went, "Holy crap, like you really don't know." what's going on with that other person, that they just either lashed out at you or they responded in a way you didn't expect. You really, you at the end of, you really don't know.
Do you know the story
Yeah.
about the 2 men in the hospital room? Have you heard the
No,
story?
no, I haven't heard that
Right.
one.
So there's 2 men in the hospital room. One is by the window and one is not, okay? And so the guy that was not by the window every day is asking his bedmate, "Hey man, I'm sick. I can't see it over there. What is it like?" He goes, "Oh my God." He's like, "The birds are chirping." He goes, "The sun's out. It's absolutely beautiful." And this goes on for days and days. And every day he asks him, "Oh my God, the sun's out. You can see everybody playing, blah, 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 blah." So one day he gets back from his doctor visit and he's not there anymore. And he asks the nurse, he said, "What happened to the guy?" And he says, "Well,
Yeah,
the guy passed away." He's like, "Oh shit, this sucks." He's
yeah.
like, "Well, can I move over to that bed so I could see out the window of this amazing view that he spoke about?" And she goes, "I hate to tell you, but he was blind and we're only blocked up. You can only look at another building."
I thought you were gonna go that way with that that way with that story. But yeah, but it's
It's
true.
the
It's
truth,
it's so
right?
true because when you peel that back, if you really think about it, what I see through my own eyes and how my brain interprets, I mean, the two of us can be looking at the exact same thing and have different interpretations of what we see based on our experiences. Don't you
Mhm.
think? You know?
1,000%. I mean, you're
Yeah.
looking
I
at the
mean,
only
it's
thing, that's
right.
why I tell people goals are meaningless. They're like, "What? You're like a mindset coach. What are you talking about?" And I go, "But think of it this way. Goals, when they're written, can only be a past representation of how you view yourself. Goals are only what you believe back here that you can accomplish. So
Mhm,
whenever you write a goal to me, I'm going to make you double it. Well, that's awkward. No, because I'd rather you stretch and I'd rather you overcome even farther than you've grown so much in a short amount of time.
mhm.
Right? And you have to
Yeah,
be, I mean, I'm not saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna be 100 millionaire tomorrow." That's not what I'm saying. But if
right,
your goal is to buy 2 properties, well, why can't you buy 4? And it's just
yeah,
because you have to become more to create that 4th property. And so when you stretch every part of yourself, right? And I
right,
think I think that's where some people are playing it safe, right? They're saying, because what we're after is freedom and options. That's really all we're after. So how you
right,
get there
right.
is up to you.
Right, and when you set that goal though too, sometimes isn't like your brain thinking to itself, "I'm gonna set a goal that I think 75% of me can achieve." So the
Correct.
goal that you set is actually smaller, it's not really a goal per se, it's just
Mhm.
something that you know you can do, and you put it down
Mhm.
on paper.
One of
Yeah.
my favorite things to do is to set a goal that kicks off other goals. So let me explain something to you. I have revenue goals that we have to create in our business, right? To continue to grow and be successful and continue to buy other businesses, right? But that's not my actual goal. What? No, my goal is that we're going to be the best place to work. Okay.
Mm,
Well, who would we have to be as a company to be the best place to work? Well, we'd have to have our shit together.
right,
And so that's a goal that strings off 10 other goals, but that is such a powerful goal in the beginning. That's the North Star.
right. It's like the
And
umbrella that covers everything else.
exactly. And so
Yeah,
let's take it to health, right? It's not that you're going to go and be an Olympic athlete every day at the gym and you're going to run and everything's going to be perfect, but I'm going to go to the gym every day for 30 days straight. We didn't define what that looks like, but how
mhm.
would you feel if you got in the gym? Or I got a better one. I'm not going to self sabotage myself and I'm going to put on my gym clothes the night
The night
before.
before, yeah. That was the best advice I ever heard.
Jesse Itzler said, he said, what people don't understand is I've already ran the marathon before the marathon starts. The night before, okay, we're going to be walking, and it's like, because
Mhm.
we're setting ourselves up for failure because we're not prepared, right?
Right.
We're not creating, once again, I'll just keep harping on it. We're not creating small wins to build up the confidence to create the big wins. I
The big
mean,
ones come in the small wins,
exactly,
honestly. The big
the
ones the
podcast
big
bites
yeah.
itself.
Yeah, the big ones Do you know how many people have told me that this is the best name for a podcast
It's great.
ever?
It's great. It's great.
Like,
I'm
this
looking
is
at
the
products I
best
can think
name
of
ever.
it. Small wins create big wins, create gigantic wins, and that's your T-shirt, right? Like, it's so money.
It wouldn't
Yeah.
fit on the thumbnail. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
it was originally small wins, big results. And I'm
Mhm.
like, results was too big of a word. It's like I gotta find a different word. And kudos to me, I didn't even chat GPT it. This
There
is
you go. That's pre-Chat
actually
GPT.
this was pre-chat GPT because I started this podcast before chat GPT really blew up. I think that was
That's
somewhere
great.
around February or March, but
That's
yeah, I'm
awesome.
like, yeah, it's a great name. I'm like, okay, well, I think we'll keep going on it and see how it goes. So you alluded to the fact you're a mindset coach. So I want to pull that out a little bit about coaching. It took me, I think, 5 months to find a coach.
Mhm.
And I had
Mhm.
several people come up and they're like, well, what did you do? Like, why did it take you that long? Why don't you just
Mhm.
like hire somebody? And you know, I think my process was I was looking for a coach that had a particular box. I'm looking for
Mhm.
this type
Mhm.
of coach. And I think finding a coach that really works, and you can agree or disagree or tell me what your thoughts on this is finding somebody who almost organically shows up
Mhm.
rather than trying to force it and finding a coach because this person has a coach or that person has a coach or that person has a coach. What's your thoughts?
So, everybody has their own life experiences, right? And some people had those experiences in the classroom, and some had it in, life, right? And I think anytime we've toyed around with or created something to manipulate people finding me, it feels so inauthentic to me. And so I've lost a lot of stress around trying to find people,
Mhm.
and I just get referred, or a friend of a friend, or they hear me and they connect and blah blah blah. It doesn't really matter, right? Because let's just call it what it is. Like, the relationship to coach to client is one of the most, as my mentor would say, it's one of the most treasured, relationships. It's so tight, right? You're hearing all the good and a lot of the bad that they probably wouldn't tell anybody else. And so you need to really value that, and you need to understand that everybody is, for lack of a better word, their own snowflake, right?
Mhm.
And what shaped them and moved them. Like, here's a perfect example. And I've told this to so many people. Me and engineer clients don't get along. Okay. I don't coach engineer clients. I've had like five try, to like think about hiring me, and we don't, because it just, like, they're too methodical in their way. Like, they're just like, oh, tell me how this is going to be. Right. And I only say that because both my grandfathers were engineers, and a lot of guys get into real estate. But me and him, I just don't even try, right? But in my career, I'm like, I think I'm going to try to coach this guy, and it would never work out right. And so, as a coach, I almost have to pick you as a client as much as you have to pick me. And what we're looking for, right, is where both people leave the relationship happy and content. What's hard is that the quantifiable things that I bring to your life are less quantifiable. And let me show you how. Okay, the easiest coaches to hire in the space, in coaching, is a wholesale coach and a flipping coach. Well, why is that? There's a dollar amount that you spend, and there's a dollar amount ROI. Okay,
Mhm.
so you're gonna hire me and you're gonna be happier. Who gives a fuck? Like, what does that mean? I want to make more money. I want this. I want that. Right. And so it's a harder sell. So if you're inauthentic in the sell, well, then the engagement's really going to go bad. And so when people truly resonate with you and they truly find you, I'll tell you a perfect example. It's a true story. Still one of my best friends to this day. I posted a YouTube video of me and another guy that he knew who was in GoBundance. He DM'd me at 8:45 on Monday night. I returned his message at 9 o'clock. We had like a 15-minute talk. I went on a Zoom the next morning, hired me that day. 10 days later, quit his job. Fast forward 30 days later, made 70 grand in wholesaling, then made 300 grand in the first year by himself, got to be with his kids again. And this is what happened to me. Rocked my effing world. I still think about it to this day. So I never saw him. I never met him. It was just Zoom, So like a year and a half passed. We're not coaching anymore, but he's got his own business now. They're growing. It's big. It's a whole thing. I'm at his house. I'm in Ohio last year, RVing, and I'm at his house. And he's got 3 young kids. He leans down to his daughter and he goes, hey, baby, you know how dad can be around so much more this year? That's the man that got him there. Oh, I was like, wow. But that guy was committed. He knew what he wanted, and we went to work. And that is just like one of those magical times when he was right and it was right, and we were boom, and we were gone, And then some are like pulling teeth, and some are easy breezy. But what I love about it is it's made me a better person. I know a lot of what I'm doing is coaching them, but I'm also learning as well too. And what I find so fun for me is that I'm coaching very smart, driven people. And it's really nice to stay. I feel like I can stay in the mix, and we're learning and we're brainstorming together. And that's so great for me. Right. And it's really been an amazing journey. It's very stressful. There's many months where I don't want to do it at all. And then there's many months where it's going great. And there's clients that have screwed me out of so much money, you have no idea. And it doesn't matter. Like, that's all relative, right? But as my fiance says, like, if you weren't doing it, you wouldn't be you. So why even talk like that? Right. And so, it's just one of those things where, and this is a true story. I haven't shared this much. I wasn't planning to do it. I started it almost 8 years early. So what happened was a buddy who was struggling with some accountability. He said, I need to hire you as a coach. And I was like, dude, no way. I'm not doing that. And he goes, well, I already Venmo'd you the money, so deal with it. And he was a multifamily broker, and he wound up tripling his sales that year. And with him, then I signed a bunch more clients. I was doing it for free for years, but not in a formal context. And really what got me off the snide, this is a true story. I've shared this a couple times, but this is a true story. I was having a real hard time getting a second client. Like, he was paying me and I was making some money, and it was fine. I was having a real hard time. We went like 3 months without getting a second. I wasn't marketing, so I wasn't really looking. But my mentor hired me. This is a guy who had 6 businesses at the time, 3 kids, was bringing in 250 grand a month.
How did that make you feel?
I'm gonna tell you exactly what happened. I just so he sends me Venmo and says, "Hey, I'm hiring you for 4 sessions." And I was like, "No, no. What the hell am I? What am I gonna do? No. I can't. He's like, "Well, I'll see you at this day at 2:00. Deal with it." I was like, "Fuck, son of a bitch." So like, I'm literally pacing the whole day. I'm like, "What the? Oh my god. Oh okay. Okay." So I'm like, look, just breathe. I was like, just be there, listen. I was like, figure it out. And so he goes on for like 30 minutes about everything. His life is very stressful. He goes on for like 30 minutes about everything in his life. And the moment he gave me an opening, dude, I just haymakered him. Like, he literally like sat back in his thing. This is exactly what happened. I swear to God. He goes, "That's just what I needed," and got off the call. Like, bam. And he said it changed his life. And I realized something in that moment. He didn't need me to run his business. He needed me to be an outside view of his life that wasn't in the context that he lived in. And that set me free on my coaching, because then I started, you don't understand, I've coached people that make 10 million, 20 million, 30 million a year. And I'm not making that. Not yet. Right. And so it's like, you had this such like, dude, I said 2 sentences to a guy that made him $1 million. And he was like,
Wow.
that's $1 million sentence right there. You just shifted my brain. I put this deal together. And I was like,
Yeah.
and he was a coach too. He coaches, he makes like, it's $100,000 to have him coach you. And I was coaching him for a year. And he
Wow.
was like, look, and he told me straight up, he's like, look, dude, my business is successful. I don't want to fucking talk business with you. He goes, but you are further along than me on the coaching, the personal development, and you're more real than I can currently be. Be that for
Yeah.
me. And I was like, okay, let's go to work.
Yeah. There you
You
go.
know, and so you find your place, and you get more confident with every session. And to be honest with you, I've just had a lot of reps. Like I
Right.
coached like a lot, and there's really only one way you can get in there is get in the game.
Right. That's true of
Yeah.
anything. I mean, that's the beauty. I mean, the beauty of your story, and I think what I love about it is that it was just so organic.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't even expect it to happen, and it happened anyway. And I
Mm-hmm.
think to pull out of it, the encouragement for anybody listening is that to look for those opportunities that you didn't think are opportunities and lean into something that, if people are pointing out to you something that's natural, don't
Mm-hmm.
fight it. Like, you fought it a little bit, but then when you really
Well,
let go, I
what
swear I
happened?
felt like you fought it a little bit, but then when
Well,
you
yeah,
let
I
go
did.
and then get into it, then, you
Yeah,
know
what happened was I got around when I got into I can't remember the name of it now. But when I got into a mastermind that was underneath GoBundance, not emerged before that, I got in this group, right? And you're meeting all these ridiculous people, right? And you're like, I got like 2 Airbnbs, and these guys got like 40 and 130, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we had this game in the first 3 months. The groups got broken up into teams, and you had a game where it would see how many 30-minute to an hour phone calls or Zoom calls you could make, and you got points for your team. Okay. And the first month, people did like 6, 7, 9, whatever. I did 94. 94. I was talking to everybody, and I was giving them advice. And they're like, dude, I don't know who you are, but whatever you're doing, just keep leaning into it. You got something, kid. And I was just like,
Great.
okay. I'm like, you're trying to like you're mowing around in the dark, you're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But you could see things that they couldn't see because you weren't inside their business. And it almost like people were like, I have no idea how you could buy an HVAC and plumbing and electric company and you've never done this before. And I go, yeah, that's part of the good thing, is that I don't have any blinders on. I'm looking
Yeah.
at it from a lens of just business. And I
Right.
think there's something to be said when you walk inside something and you don't have a view on it, right? Like, what would it look like if we actually let people speak without having to worry about context,
Mm.
right? Like, what would we let them have an idea and we don't have a response for it right away?
Freedom for them.
Freedom, freedom
Yeah.
to think, freedom to like, we don't allow that anymore. You start a
Right.
podcast, the lighting has to be right, and you have to have 100 million subscribers in the first minute, and blah blah blah. No, it doesn't work that way. You either
Do it
love
because you
doing
do
it and
it.
you're going to continue to do it, or you're not, and it's
Right.
simple as that. So if you
Right.
started it for the right reasons, then you'll keep going for the right reasons.
Right, right. Because it can't be, you have to have something inside you that's propelling you. And I think that circles back around to what we were talking about before when we were, when you talk about that Facebook and you're scrolling through Facebook. And so you have something externally outside of you that's trying to convince you that you have to go do something. And
Hmm.
that can only get you so far. You
Hmm.
would see somebody, oh, they've been to the gym. Oh, I guess I better go to the gym. And you saunter in day one, and then you
Hmm.
go day two, and then you don't feel like going day three. Well, you have something externally that's driving you. But when you have that internal drive, and if you tap into it the right way, you become unstoppable,
Hmm.
when you're channeling it in the right direction. So, like my podcast. I mean,
Yeah.
I only have about 18 to, I think average is between 18 and 25 listens a day.
Hmm.
That's it. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm on episode 50 something.
I
It's
used to
okay.
not go to college. I used to not go to class in college if it rained. Like, I was like, I can't go today. It's raining, right? And so we create these like ridiculous things in our head.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, like I can't go. Like, here's my motivation to anybody, right? And let me show. I'll show small steps, big wins. Watch it. Watch this go right now. Watch this go. So this is hand to God true story. I had just got divorced and I had just got sober and I just lost my job. I was mentally not in a place, my private equity job. I was not in a place to handle rejection. Let's just call it what it was, okay? So I made myself a promise that for my first year, I refused to look at my download numbers on my podcast. So my producer knew, but I didn't know. And one day I couldn't take it anymore and he said, "Look, dude, all you need to know is that it's going up and to the right. And that's all you need to know." This is a true story. So we're in year 4.5, give or take, right?
Mhm.
4 years. I did more podcast downloads in January and February of this year than I did all of the first year,
Wow.
right? And so
Yeah.
we crossed over 100,000 downloads,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever, right?
Consistency and you show up.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
made myself a promise that I would never miss a week.
Right.
It wasn't about It was yes, I wanna get new people, and it's been great, but you're gonna be there every
Mhm.
day in, day out. And guess what? When I didn't want to, I would create greatest hits of, and I would send those out because we think, that everybody's listening to every episode, but there's a lot of podcasts out there, so you wanna sprinkle in a bunch
Right.
of different stuff. But what I find the most exciting to me is I actually have a friend who's listened from the beginning, and he said, "Man, you are so much better." Like, he's like, "I've seen you grow." Like, he's like, "Wow." He's like, "It is wild to me." Like
Yeah.
episode 1 to like 500 and whatever. He's like, "It is wild to see your life and the transformation and what you've done." He's like, "You're a great interviewer now. You understand it, cadence." And so it's just cool to have that reference point. I see it as
Mhm.
a life marker, really.
Yeah, yeah. I've experienced that too. I mean, I'm on episode, like I said, 50, but even from the very first 2, 3, 4, 5 to now, I'm so much more chill
Mhm.
and so much more
What
relaxed.
was what
And
was your what was your biggest fear before you started the podcast?
biggest fear was, it's funny. The biggest fear was not getting it right the
Mhm,
first time.
mhm.
It had to be perfect. So my first podcast, the first couple, I remember spending hours and hours doing the editing on it.
This is
Okay,
a
just
real
getting it
story.
out.
I had three Airbnbs. I joined that mastermind. I was working
Mm.
2 jobs. I was cleaning all the properties myself.
Oh
I
my
get
god.
in the group, like, the first week, and I meet, like, all these Airbnb owners, and
Yeah.
they have a 30, 60, 100, and he goes, "I don't understand." He goes, "You're handing out keys?" He goes, "What?" He goes, "You don't have cameras and then, like, digital locks?" I was like, "What's that?"
What the
And
hell?
he's like, so I go do that, and I'm like, "Oh my god, I could do, like, 40 of these." And, like, so
Yeah.
it's like, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, since then, I've discovered Descript and I've discovered
But you know
StreamYard
what you
and,
but you know
you
what you
know
didn't but you know what you didn't do, though? You
what?
did not start.
Right, I
You
started.
did not start. You started.
Didn't I
And
started.
because you
That's right.
started, you gain knowledge, which then is only gonna propel you farther.
Right, right, and I've had others ask me starting their own podcast since. They're like, "Well, what do you do?" I'm like, "Well, here's what not to do first. I'll
Mhm.
tell you I'll tell you what not to do, and then this is what I do now." But, yeah, it's 7 months later in a
It's so
much
great.
different place than what I was, 7 months ago,
Well, I
you know
tell Mark all the time, right? My past strategy. I said, "What we're not talking about here is, can you imagine the level of knowledge and access that all these podcast producers and editors are getting? This
Mhm,
free content of these amazing conversations and all
yeah,
these people that are going to be super successful because of their editing podcasts. I know it's not, we don't talk about that ever. Look, don't get me wrong. I appreciate every compliment I get. Every single one of them I cherish. The fact that anybody listens blows me away still to this day.
yeah, same.
But when the podcast producer says you're doing great, life's pretty good. He's got a new one, right? And she's like, "This Austin kid, he's really got something. He's going somewhere," and I'm like, "Yeah," and so
You know what?
because
Here's
she
the
listens
funny
to it all the time, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, here's the funny thing with podcasting and listening to other people and connecting the dots. So we didn't even talk about the fact, and I guess we could go there. I hired you as my coach because of a podcast,
Yeah.
because I heard Mark on a podcast that Jamie did with him, and
Mhm.
I enjoyed listening to Mark so much that I Googled him and I'm like, he's got to be on somebody else's podcast somewhere. So that's how I found his interview with you. And I listened to that and I'm like, damn. So this guy has something. So I figured, I'm going to be a little, ballsy here, I guess. And I reached out to you to come on my podcast. I reached out to Mark to come on my podcast, and the rest is history. The original conversation I had with you was just to interview you to
Yeah.
find out what you would do or what you
Mhm.
would talk about when you came on my podcast.
Mhm.
And what
Mhm.
happened? It was like
Mhm.
an hour and a half later. And I'm like, I hung up the phone. I'm like, I have to hire him. Because I
Well,
know
I
I need
think
you for my
it
coach.
it's such a weird, it's such an interesting forum, right?
Yeah,
I
it
think I
is.
think anybody that I talk to, right, their number one fear is how am I going to get guests, right? That's the number one fear I hear,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And that's the least of your concerns,
yeah,
okay? Uh,
that's not my
I
problem.
have way too many. Yeah, that's number one. The second is at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you it doesn't matter if nobody listens or anybody listens, right? Because you're going to learn more about yourself.
Mhm,
Look at it from a lens of being selfish about creating your own little mastermind, right? Your podcast is your own little mastermind, and you have a platform that
right,
allows you to network, right? And allows you to meet, right? And it's interesting, right? I'm in a different phase of my life where I try to keep my life pretty quiet right now. I've got a lot going on. CEO of a big company, do the coaching, some other stuff, etc. And early on, it was about networking and it was about meeting right now. And that's still, it still does, right? But it gives me a platform to access people that I might not have other reason to
mhm,
talk to them. And so it doesn't mean that we're going to become best friends after we talk, but
right,
it allows that door to always be there. And I think, one of my strengths is networking. And you never know, like a woman I met today, like absolutely just amazing. Like we could have talked for like 24 hours. Relationship coach, connection coach. We were just talking about life and different stuff. Like I would have never met her if it wasn't for the podcast and her friend that I met from somebody else that recommended somebody else,
mhm,
and so these dominoes, they fall, right? And you never know what's going to come of it, right? And for me, my big milestone was there was a billionaire that I wanted to interview. He is wild as shit. He is crazy. He talks crap on everybody. He sold his company for $4.3 billion. He's the number one podcast host on in two categories. Like he's amazing. He's
wow,
crazy. He's a
okay,
writer, like a just famous writer. Um, and I could have easily gone to my mentor and got him because he
yeah,
mentored my mentor. And I told myself, I said, that's not what this is about.
yeah,
I said, you need to earn the right yourself to get him on. And so what I did is I wanted 100 episodes in the can before I asked him, right? Then I watched some podcast that he was on, and then I angled my pitch to it, and he was like, sure, sounds great, let's do it, right? And
yeah,
we had such a good time. But just getting him, right, was like, oh, okay, like, wow, okay, wow, this is crazy. Like, you can do this. And that was a big step for me in my confidence, right? But what really set me apart, this was like the holy crap moment. I met Austin Adams, who's a big multifamily guy who owns a podcast company too. Right when I started out, he saw my schedule like 6 months in. He was like, dude, this is terrible. He goes, I don't even know how you podcast. He's like, your schedule's all over the place. You're doing this, you're doing that. He goes, this ain't going to work. He goes, you need to pick one day that
mm,
you're going to podcast and you're only going to do it that day. I'm like, dude, oh my God, nobody is going to sign up on that day. I'm going to get no guests. I switched this to
uh-huh,
Wednesday. And the first person I was trying to get on was Gino Barbaro. But what you don't understand is there's a reason why Gino means something to me. And I'll share that in
hmm,
just a second. There's a
sure,
reason why it's so important to get him on and talk to him. All I had was Wednesdays open, and I'm like, dude, this is going to be a nightmare. So I sent an email. I'm like, hey, if this doesn't work for you, we can find some time. And he booked on Wednesday, and I was like, holy crap, it works. And it blew my mind. And I was like, oh my God. Do you want
Our
to hear the
head.
story about Gino, why it was so important to me? So
Yes. Sorry.
I
Why was it
spent
so
I spent
important?
20 years in hospitality. I sold wine for 20 years. I worked at high-end restaurants, came up with the best drink menus, the whole nine. Well, I was waiting on Jake Harris, who's in GoBundance. I didn't know who he was. Jake Harris runs a $1 billion equity fund that invests in real estate. And I was talking to him about real estate, and I didn't know anything. And he slid me a yellow piece of paper. I swear to God, like it was like a drug deal. He slid me a yellow piece of paper, and on the I swear to God, this is all it said was biggerpockets.com. And I was like, what? And so I went home, and the first episode I turned on was Gino and Jake. It was their
Yeah.
first episode ever, the recording of them. And Gino is annihilating the restaurant business. I mean, just he's like, this is so stupid. If I would have bought multifamily back then, and he just goes into this whole thing. And that day, my dream of owning a restaurant died. Right. So I started investing in real estate. This true story. 2.5, 3 years, 4 years later, I'm on a ride and share bus that my buddy invited me to, Gino and Jake, in Nashville. And I walked right up to Gino and I was like, hey, man, I just want to let you know, God bless you. Thank you so much for having me not be involved in restaurants anymore. I appreciate you so much. It was such a crazy moment that like
Yeah.
4 years later, that piece of paper turned into me being there, having him on my
Yeah.
podcast. It was such a
It's
wild thing.
amazing how those small things, I mean, let's go back to just the word small things that lead to big results.
Mhm.
How often in our lives do we get so caught up in things we don't really need to get caught up in that we miss those small steps, those small opportunities? Because
Mm.
think about it. I mean, think about another scenario. He slid you that piece of paper. You
You
could have
threw it
put it in
away.
your pocket or
Mhm.
thrown it away. Yeah. And then how would that have changed your trajectory?
This is like fork in the road, like crazy moment in time, and it's very undescribable almost. So I had left my restaurant gig finally after wanting to leave for like 5 years, and went all in on short-term rentals, and we were running properties all across the state. We had investors everywhere. I was flying to everywhere. It was just bananas. It was just crazy. We scaled so fast. We had like 28 properties we scaled in like 5 months. We were crushing it for all types of investors. Me and one of the other owners, there was three of us, had a big issue with each other that wasn't going away. Okay. He had a view of his future, and I didn't like my view in that future. Just put it that way. It was not. He wrote me a 3-page paper. These were all the behaviors that I needed to change within the next 60 days, or I would have to
Ooh.
be removed from the company. And so I read it, I looked him up, and I said, yeah, go fuck yourself. And I left, right? And I'm not shitting you, I lit 30 grand on fire. I walked away because from the
Mm.
business, the money I invested.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm feeling bad for myself. I'm feeling just like rock bottom, like 3 days, just beating myself up, senseless.
Right.
Well, I left my job where I ran a big food hall and worked for a billionaire developer, and I ran all the drinks there, and it was our 2-year anniversary. And I said, look, I got nothing going on today. Let me go down there. Let me see some of my old staff. Let me, say hello to everybody. I'll stop in, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I go and I park the car, and I'm walking down the steps out of the parking garage. And I'm walking up to these massive, like 20-foot glass doors where you can see inside. I see everybody at the bar, and I see all my old employees. And when I went to go reach my hand on the door, a voice said to me in my ear, that's not your life anymore. Turn around. So I let the door go. As soon as I turned around, I got a phone call from a guy I hadn't spoke to in 10 years back in Austin. He said, hey man, you don't happen to be in between jobs right now. Would you like to come and work for my private equity firm, lending money to developers and construction guys?
No
I said,
shit.
yes, I would. Went the next day to a job interview, took that job, never went back to the restaurant business.
Wow. I don't even have a response to that because, I have to wonder, let me ask you, you listen to that voice, right?
Hmm.
But was there a part of you that was open to other possibilities
I
as
was open
well?
to I was open to
And
anything that wasn't that.
yeah,
You
right.
know?
Yeah,
You
right. So
know?
when you're looking for those things, I have to wonder, when we're open to those other possibilities that, they find us because we're open to them, as
Well,
opposed to
I tell
saying,
everybody
like, I'm just going, okay, I'm gonna go walk through that door and then go back to my old life.
I tell everybody entrepreneurship is really simple to describe. It's
Mhm.
walking down a hall with no door handles and the lights are off. How long are you gonna walk down the thing? Because that path backwards is super easy.
Yeah.
It's really easy to go back in that terrible relationship because that person, they're not that bad, right?
Yeah.
We
Did
do
you
that
fight scarcity mindset too? Like, do you have to fight that? Yeah,
every
right.
day, every
Yeah.
day, every. I
Yeah.
had no idea what I'm doing, selling investments to people, but then I did know what I'm doing. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you get in the room and you're like, wait, this ain't that complicated. I do this for. I've read all
Yeah.
the books. I know what I'm doing. It's sales. This is what I did for 20 years.
Yeah.
So they wanted me to do like small loans, but those didn't excite me, like 100,000 or something. And my boss was like yelling at me. He's like, "You got to get a loan in there," and I'm like, "Dude, it's boring, bro." And I was like, "What if I get you like a $1.9 million loan? Would you lay off my back?" And he was like, "Yeah, right. Good luck." My first loan was 1.85 million, and I said, "Yeah, kiss my ass, right?" Well, then the big boss calls me in the next day at 6 a.m. This is a real story. I swear to God. To this day, still talk to this guy. To this day, still talk to one of the greatest humans I've ever known in my entire life. Been in the space for 40 years, his space for 40 years. This is right after I did the huge loan. I'm feeling great about myself. He says, "Come meet me for breakfast in the morning at 6 a.m. before anybody else gets in." Sounds good. I walk into his office and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to fire you in 3 weeks or you're going to quit. That's the only way this is going to go down." I'm like, "Excuse me?" I was like, like, what the hell? And he goes, "Austin, you're amazing. If I cage an eagle, I can't let him fly." He goes, "This isn't you." He goes, "You're an entrepreneur, man. Go do entrepreneurship stuff, change people's lives. I can't leave you here."
Mm.
He goes, "If you leave you here, you'd just die." And he said, "But I'm going to tell you the best piece of advice I can give you. This piece of advice has stuck with me every day, and I tell myself this every day." He said, "You see that bullseye right there up on my wall?" He said, "I want you to get so damn good at something, like what you were innately born on this earth to do. And I want you to hit that bullseye so many damn times that you knock it off the effing wall. That's success."
So what bullseye are you hitting that you're so good at?
Connecting and impacting people. And when you do that at scale, right, through small businesses or coaching, you realize that people are chasing the wrong things because energy is what you're after. Like, who do I spend time around that lifts me up, makes me even more excited when I leave? And who makes me want to go take a nap after I spent time with them?
Right.
What job do I go to that I feel depleted? Look, just so we're clear, it's 6:42 where I'm at right now on the East Coast. I've been going this morning since 4:30. Do I
Mm.
look like I've lost anything? I've had a meeting every hour from the day. Why is that? Because I don't do anything on my schedule that's not a fuck yes. But yes, it took a long time to cultivate it,
Right.
but chase those things, create that energy, and then boom, everything else opens up for you and
Well,
opportunities come flowing.
if you love what you're doing, it doesn't matter, does it? Time
Mhm,
just kind of floats,
mhm,
you
mhm,
know?
mhm,
If you're in that zone of genius and you know that that's where you're supposed to be,
mhm,
then it's not heavy. You're
mhm,
in flow with it.
mhm,
Whether light or heavy, I mean, the one thing And just to come back around a little, we were talking about big or small or good or better, like things are on magnitude that we create them to be.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
something that's quote unquote heavy or big to me might not be big to you. So, who really defines that
Yeah.
big or
Mhm.
heavy or, bad or good? It's all how
Let
we
me
filter it in our own minds, right? So, like, why even try and put it in a box,
exact
So,
exact story
wha
from today. One of my sales guys, who's a newer sales guy, is having another baby. Their car got broken into.
mm,
It's been a rough couple weeks. He's, waiting for some sales to come in. Like, that's the whole thing, right? Life stuff, right? So he's been a little, let's use cranky as the word for a couple days. All right. So he's been helping us also with some things on the side that he was going to get paid for probably in a month or two. I sat down, I talked to him for 15 minutes, asked him how he was doing, what's going on in his life, where's his problems. I left. I went and wrote him a check for $1,000, which fixes his car so his wife can get back to work, so it takes his stress away. And I handed it to him. And I said, thank you. I said, I really hope this helps. He started crying.
mm,
On the big scheme of things for my company, yeah, it's not, money's money, but it's not the end of the world for the HVAC company but to him, that's 100 grand. That's more important today than it is nickel and diming pennies around the company.
people matter.
People over profits is our motto.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's a hard one to
Yeah.
live by. No, I'm just kidding, but it's an easy one to live by, but the people gotta make the profits, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
No, but,
right.
no, but that's that's casting out a vision of a small win today, small step, a small win that's gonna pay off big wins because he's dedicated and loyal to the company. In that
Yeah.
moment, like, that's important. That's important on so many levels, right? And so, we take those moments for granted, right? Like, you say, like, me walking away from that door was a big deal, but, like, what would your life look like if you didn't send that message? It's those micro moments.
Right. We're
Mhm,
always looking for the big things. And
mhm,
I think we need to really slow ourselves down and just
mhm,
look for the small wins and compare and just see who were we were yesterday, are we
mhm,
better off today than what we were
mhm,
yesterday? And even if that's too micro, go back a month, go back a year. I mean, my life, I go back a year, I'm in a completely different place today than I was a year ago. I'm in a completely different place today than I was, well,
mhm.
you would tell me 2 weeks ago, you know? So
Mean, I shouldn't make you cry on your own podcast.
it might show people that I'm real.
Yeah. Well, I think that when you invest in yourself, regardless of what you do, I think that's the greatest ROI that you can create, right?
Yeah.
And Alex Ramosi, who's my favorite business guy, he
Oh,
calls
I love Alex.
the S&P me.
Yeah,
He goes,
right.
that's the number one investment vehicle, and it's the truth. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it's we create we create hurdles, right? And we create all these ridiculous things so we don't do it. I'm in an area currently where they haven't had a lot of wins for many years when it comes to business, but my employees are happy. My employees are excited about the future. Is that one person that did all that? Or is it a culture that bleeds through my COO? And are we going to put up with negative behavior? No, we're not, because you're great. You're great. And I told the Chamber of Commerce lady, I said, this town only needs one thing. I said, you're worried about the economy. You're worried about all these things. I said, these people need to be reminded that they're awesome, that this is a beautiful place and it matters. And when you do that, you start taking care of your grass.
Mhm.
You start taking care of yourself. You start taking care of the park down there. You clean up after yourself. That on a collective, like in a neighborhood, right? What's the joke? You start mowing your grass, you start taking care of your grass, your neighbors start doing it.
Mhm.
What grass do you have in your life that you haven't been mowed or manicured? That's what you need to get after.
So I have the same questions at the end. You've
What
already
you got?
answered them, you know?
What you got? No, give
You've
me another
already
one.
answered. So, no, what's the one question you wish I should have asked, or the topic that you wish we should have covered that I didn't, and how would you answer it or expand on it?
When you start with the small steps, what
Yeah.
you're actually doing is you're creating a new identity. And your identity is your anchor point that is who you believe you are, right? If you really want an episode about this, Mike Bayer, Bayer, and Ed Milet.
Mm,
He's an amazing coach. He talks about creating an alter ego that then creates this new version of yourself. And remember that our identity, right? I'll use a simple example. I'm an alcoholic. Okay. Well, that's an identity that you can't slip even if you do get sober for 30 days.
mhm.
So I am a healthy person that seeks at every opportunity to be healthy. Oh, well, that sounds way different, right? I am a
Right.
person that lives and breathes and commits to small steps, small wins. You don't even got to worry about the big stuff. That new
Right.
identity will take care of itself. And
Right.
so identity is not talked about enough. I don't think it's um I don't think a lot of enough people know how it works, right? It's
Hmm.
basically slid into your subconscious and
Right.
that's, my favorite book.
That
I've
was my
bought
next question.
well, I bought 70 copies. If I just run into people in the streets, I buy them copies. It's called What You Say When You Talk to Yourself.
Hmm.
What You Say When You Talk to Yourself. It's about subconscious behaviors. It's a really great book, easy to read. He's like the OG of like personal development back in the day.
Who wrote that one?
His name is Shad Helmsy, something like that. He was
Cool.
like back in the day, he did like the tapes, right? And so like tells the story, like the joke is so great. Like a wife she's having a rough time in her marriage. And she went to a self-help thing and she wanted to play it for her husband. And he was like, turn that shit off. And so she'd be in the kitchen playing the tapes. And so for 10 days straight, she played the tapes while he's watching football. And on the 10th day, he said, turn up that tape. And they started loving each other. They started hugging. They started
Mm,
dancing. It
mhm.
wasn't because she told him to listen to the tape, is that it slid in his subconscious mind and every day. And
Yeah.
so what I'm saying to people is sometimes, and I'm just being honest, in the morning, I'm daydreaming, I'm thinking about business. I might not be listening, but I'm listening. And so I'd much rather have positive things going on in my head because even though you might not consciously hear them, you're subconsciously bringing them in. So the books you read, the podcasts you listen to, the people you're around, the conversations, everything slips in. And this is
Right.
what that
It
book talks
matters.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, it matters. What you let into your mind matters,
Mhm.
and what you fill it with matters.
Perfect example.
Because
I don't
yeah,
watch horror movies. I think it's
yeah,
absolutely ridiculous that people this stuff
yeah,
and
I don't either.
haunted houses, don't get me started, okay? I've almost broken like 3 noses, okay? Like, I
Yeah,
am like, my fiance is like, loves that stuff, and I'm like, no, I'm
no,
good." And
yeah.
it's not that I just don't do it, right? And so, like,
Yeah,
I
I
know
don't
that
either. I mean, like, I don't know how I did it, but my husband made me watch, like, every episode of Dexter, and then after a while, I'm like, "Dude, why the hell am I watching this?" You know, and it almost got comical, but then it got to the point where, "Oh, wait a minute, he's gonna go, like, slice and dice somebody." I'll get up and I go, like, somewhere else. I'm like, "Let me know when the scene's over," because I just I can't take it anymore. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks
There
for
are
having me.
lots of little nuggets in here. If people want to find you, do you want people to find you?
You can find me.
What's the name of
Uh
your podcast? We didn't even say the name of your podcast, so make sure you get that
It's
in
called
there.
Construct Your Life: How to Build a
Mm,
Lifestyle, Not a Bank Account. And then it's super easy. You just go to austinlinney.com, Linney. It has a podcast on there. You can reach out to me there. I'm
awesome.
on Twitter a lot these days, so I'm over there. But
Isn't
yeah,
that
Twitter and
X?
Instagram, X or whatever it's called,
Isn't
whatever.
it?
All the guys are complaining because the bill goes through now, and their wife they think their wives think it's like a porn site. So He's
Yeah,
like,
where they're
"Great."
having an
Right.
affair.
Yeah, they're like, "Great, Elon. Like, now,
Yeah,
it
thanks.
was a bird. Now I'm getting in trouble over here. Thanks." Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, I commend you, my friend, to go out and conquer your day.
Thank you.